this is something we wanted to push very strategically. The leadership follow-up, what would you call that kind of a system? Like,
so there are two parts to it. It's called a value chain.
Value chain, that's perfect.
Value chain is the salesperson talks to ops, gets an accepted bid, goes to Coney, passes through Braden, comes back, gets approved, done.
That's
There were 9 steps involved. If one person drops the ball, what happens to the value chain? It's broken.
It's broken.
So you should find out who are your value chain breakers.
Yes.
And there's time for a re-education process.
This is so great.
So you train on the value chain, but here's what we train. Our culture says the ball never leaves your court. If I have to go to you to give me something, Braden, and I've handed it off to you, here's what most people do. I handed it off, I'm done. And then you needed it the next day, and you forgot about it. If you needed it the next day, the ball never left your court. So you have to actually do something that we call clarify, verify.
Have you ever wanted a multimillionaire to step in your shoes and give you perspective on what they would do if they were you? Well, guess what? I am pausing my podcast for this brief moment to make sure you have access to my cell phone, because you can text me, Kris, I want a free game plan. Literally just text 385-217-3477. And I got news for you. You can ask me a question about anything. You can ask me a question about life, the meaning and purpose of it. We can talk about finances, business, real estate, marriage. If you got a question, text me. Let's jam.
Great, I have this thing. I need it tomorrow noon. Out of respect, is that even possible? Oh, based on your list, you couldn't have till 5 p.m.? That doesn't work for me. Let me show you why. I have this meeting. It's got to be by noon. Is there any way we can juggle things around? Braden finally conceives and says, yeah, I can get it done. It was a respectful conversation. I am going to, and I teach this in my company, here's how the ball stays in my court. I don't use my calendar for appointments. I use my calendar for commitments. Which means if he owes me something noon the next day and I keep the ball in my court, I have put something on my calendar at noon. And it says, Braden gives me X. Now, if I go to Braden tomorrow at 11 a.m., how's Braden going to feel? Gypped and undervalued. Why? I didn't give him a chance to win. When am I actually going to approach Braden if he hasn't given me something to do? 1 p.m. And I'm going to say, you owed me this thing, you didn't give me this thing, what happened? And he's like, oh, I forgot, here it is. I'm going to go to whoever his hierarchy leader is, and I'm not going to complain. I'm going to educate and say, hey, Braden promised me this thing at noon. I had to follow back up, which meant that I was micromanaging, which is not a job I like to do in our company. We don't do micromanagement. It was his job to report in, and he didn't. I just wanted to make you aware. His boss sits down with Braden, and he says, hey, Kris asked something from you. You got it to him an hour late, and he had to bug you for it. That makes me look bad in my department, because it meant that even though we clarified, verified, he had agreement formation on what you were supposed to do. You dropped the ball, and then you made him go after it. What can you and I do in our agreement formation so that I don't have to have a conversation with Kris like that ever again? Well, we've taught the whole company. Now everyone can hold each other accountable to a new system. So clarify, verify means, for us, is that a complicated value chain that has many people involved, it only takes one person to break everything. So what that means is that as long as you have more in the value chain to do, you keep your eye on the ball. You use your calendar not to book appointments only, but to also book commitments. And then we teach. We are a report in, we are a report out, not report in culture. If I have to report in, I'm a micromanager. If you report out, then it means you take ownership for what you're doing.
Yes, that is in Jocko's book, I believe.
So that's part of extreme ownership.
Yeah.
So in our company, it is a report out culture. The moment someone has to report in on you, which means that you didn't give them the report when you said you would, it means that you're a baby. Like you need a warm baba, and you need someone to change your doo-doo because you understood what you agreed to and you didn't do it. That violated the principle of integrity, doing what you say you're going to do. Which, by the way, is of all cultural components, is my number one. If you say you're going to do something and you don't say it, don't do it. It tells me everything I need to know about you. Your reputation just went to the toilet with me. Now I'll leave you a little bit of a room. If you were to come to me and say, I'm not going to have it done in time, and here's why, I'm going to say, your integrity quotient just went up because you're adjusting the expectation to make it realistic because of new information that you don't have access to. I respect that. You meet your obligation, I respect that. You don't do it, that's a problem. You don't do it and report that you didn't do it, you're freaking busted in my company. Because business, when it explodes, if you don't have a report out culture with integrity, with clarify, verify, value chain gets broken all the time, and all of a sudden checks don't go out, and people become disgruntled and drama flies through.
Fantastic. As far as our systems that we have to report, so you basically have individual reps. So I think one of the core things that I'm noticing that I wrote on one of our walls was to make sure everyone feels heard as a core value, something along those lines. But with that, what I want to ask your opinion on, like, this system on days of the week to follow weekly. So from the bottom to the top, it's being constantly communicated. We're thinking something like Thursday, Friday, or Friday, Saturday. The sales side communicates up to the top, in an organic way, and then on Monday, we've all leadership has been notified of what's going on, and then Tuesday we have a meeting kind of.
Can I share a little bit of a different approach? Yes. I'm going to go first to principle,
okay,
before we get into the how.
Okay.
Everything that is meaningful to the company needs to be measured. The frequency or rate at which you measure determines how many opportunities you want to improve. For example, we have a sales meeting once a quarter to evaluate how we're doing. How many opportunities in a year do you get to course correct? Four. When something is tied to revenue, it should be measured more. Sales, we actually have certain things that are measured daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly. So for example, every salesperson knows they're critical drivers every day, and they have to report out on a Google Doc that everyone can see what they did.
Yep. I
knocked X doors, I had X closing conversations, I closed X deals. Whatever is important to measure, there should be 2 or 3 or 4, and the salesperson, has to report it every day.
I love it.
Now, here's the standards. If you do enough of each of those 3 items, they turn green on the spreadsheet. If you didn't do enough, they turn red. So now everyone is seeing everyone's red or greens. And we tell them, if you have red, that day you get a conversation with your manager. Why? Because this is how you watch revenue every day. The KPI might tell you how much revenue they produced in the week, but don't you want to know whether they're hitting their activity targets or not every day? If someone owes you 4 units of something and they give you 2, the conversation with that manager that day should be, why did you only do 2 of the 4 units? And more importantly, how are you giving me 6? Restitution? I got to make up for what I didn't do? Yes. So certain things are measured daily, certain things weekly, and certain things monthly. And so you have to look at everything in the company and ask, how often should we be measuring something? For example, P&Ls. I do not look at my P&L weekly.
Right.
I look at my revenue weekly. Yeah. I look at my P&Ls once a month, right? So there is an appropriate frequency for every activity. And more is not better. The right amount is best.
I like it. I'm trying to think, so like doors knocked, decision makers, people pitched, appointments set, referrals received, would be, you pulled up, on the daily.
So let me see what you got here.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, this is based off of a weekly report.
Yep, so this is their scorecard.
Yep.
Right out of the gate, it's okay to have 6. 6 is a lot.
It is a lot, huh?
And so what I would ask is,
we could cut the referrals, Kris.
It's not so much about cutting. It's more about saying, if it's going to be looked at every day, what can I collapse that insinuates the others?
Yes. Let's say sits.
So if you take a look at this,
it's 10, 11, 12. Those 3.
Yeah. So I think there's like, instead of deciding right now, I would have a debate and say, if you could only have 4, which 2 do you cut? And if you cut, where else do you recapture that? For example, with referrals, how many referrals do you want to get a day? Well, here's what you might do. Hey guys, every week, whoever gets X number of referrals gets a spiff.
Nice.
You found a different way that
great.
didn't put a daily focus on it. Because if you tell them to track everything, it's like telling someone to track nothing. Salespeople are simple-minded folks, meaning they hyper-focus in a very specific vein and they ignore lots of other stuff.
Yep.
If you give them too many rabbits to chase, they'll usually catch none. So play with it, right? Like, by the way, that's not the advice you should act on. You could run a test, right? But if any of them are collapsible, so you always got to ask, what do I measure, what do I train? For example, to me, decision making is training, not tracked. I'm constantly retraining. Why decision makers, why decision makers, why decision makers. By the way, if you want your close rate to go up,
that's the focus.
Guess what? Your close ratio is low. Guess why? How are you doing with decision makers? I could be doing better. Don't measure it, teach it. Yeah. Decision making is a training thing, right? Because it's hard to know what is my real number on decision making. So always ask, is this a training issue or is this a data issue? Some of those things are going to be keep the data. Some of them are like, it's more of a principle that will increase close ratio. So now when you look at the data and the close ratio is low, it's like, it's one of three things. You know, it's this, or it's decision makers. So let's train on that, and your close number should go up. Because I want them to become obsessed with 3 figures a day. You can't be obsessed with 6. There was a time when we didn't have smartphones and you had to memorize cell phone numbers. There's a reason why it was always 7 digits. Because they tested, and a person can't remember 8. They can remember 7. So in sales, generally, 3 is a great number. You could do 4, should do more than 4. I agree. Because you need them obsessed with these numbers. And the fewer the numbers, the easier it is to pound, understand. One last thing I didn't bring up that's really important. Your top line managers, your upper managers in the company, they should have a quarterly retreat where they get together and they play and they mastermind and they get on the same page with goals and they share in the spoils of war if they work as a team. So each quarter, the most important thing that happens in my company is I take my high-level execs and we spend a day together. I bring in my next managers and we spend a day together. And what the purpose is to play, eat, celebrate, connect, and then hardcore business combos, hard business. By the way, when you've been playing, pair that up with hard conversations, and what builds is camaraderie. And people come together and they start realizing we're on the same team. And then I have them tell me, what's your goal for the quarter? They have to help come up with it. I, as the leader, need to make sure that it's realistic. And then I'm going to throw out a special bonus of some type that they all share in equally if they can collectively hit the goal. Now Terry is like, I'm not driving revenue, but if I can do things that will help you drive revenue, then I get a bonus. And we're on the same team. This bonus is outside of their normal compensation that makes them sane. So that's another thing that we're going to talk about is the quarterly retreat.
I've got it noted.
That quarterly retreat is so important to drive 90 days of company growth. And just one little side thing that we do is we always set a goal based on past performance and what's possible. And then what we say is if we hit 20% above that goal, you're going to get a bonus. If you get 20% below that word, you're not getting anything. So there's always a high-level bonus, a hit the target bonus, and we forfeit the bonus. And it's either 20% below the mark or 20% above the mark. And as the team comes together, they only want to hit 20% of like there's only one goal. And if you don't give it to them and they get to help co-create it, and it's bigger than we've had before, there's no sandbagging, your company quarter over quarter over quarter will grow. And more importantly, the most important relationships will come together and form relationships. Hierarchy without quarterly retreats will sabotage the level of connecting that's needing to occur to make sales and ops do what they need to do.
So bringing those together on that ops and sales on the quarterly.
100%. It is a must. As outside of their 2 lunches a month, this is when it's like, and this is when the company like says, we're going horseback riding, we're going go-karting, like we're gonna force you to laugh and play. I will bring a couple grand cash and we'll play stupid arbitrary games and just like throw cash around. We'll have the most extravagant meals. They feel so loved. And then when it comes time to make goals, guess what? There's an environment for people to play.